Okay, what does that mean? How is this important? And I'm going to get there now, where I'm trying to go here. Today's segment is to explain how CBT can be applied to tinnitus rehabilitation. And in answering the specific comment that I come across quite often, which is, hang on, I have tinnitus or hyperacusis. These are physical symptoms that I'm experiencing. Why on earth do I need therapy? How does that even relate? I'm not crazy. I'm not mad. I actually am experiencing these physical symptoms. So why are you suggesting that I should be applying a therapy to rehabilitate from a physical symptom? Now, I'm here to answer this question primarily because I also understand where you're coming from. And I can truly, hopefully, well, I hope that I can shine a light on where CBT or perhaps alternative types of therapy can apply to your tinnitus rehabilitation. So I do believe this is a very legitimate question, because ultimately, when you are experiencing a physical symptom, how is talking about it helping that to reduce? Shouldn't I have a pill? Shouldn't I have a physical remedial product more than simply expressing my distress? So I want to just climb back to the nature of tinnitus. And we must come back to the fact that, and don't shoot the messenger here because this has been clinically researched, and it is very apparent that tinnitus is a perception of sound where none exists in the environment. So what does that mean? It means it is subjective by and large for the majority of people. Sometimes we have, in rare instances, objective tinnitus, whereby other people can actually hear the tinnitus that you're experiencing yourself. But the majority of tinnitus cases are, in fact, subjective. So only the person experiencing tinnitus can perceive it. It is from within. So the outside forces or the outside people are not aware of it, cannot measure it. There is no objective measure to tinnitus. Every tinnitus clinical measure is indeed subjective, because tinnitus is a subjective experience in the first place. It is a perception of sound. So therefore it is individualized. It is unique to that person experiencing it. So clinically, we see that two people with severe tinnitus or catastrophic tinnitus, so the utmost distress that we can clinically measure via clinical diagnostic scales. So if we have two people who are at the very, very end of the spectrum, the highest end of the spectrum for tinnitus perception or tinnitus distress, which is called catastrophic levels of tinnitus, why is it that one person who has experienced this can perhaps function very well in their daily life, and another person is completely debilitated by it? Okay. An example that comes to mind is someone who, for example, a war veteran, okay, which is very, very common. So when we have people who have been in the military, incredibly common for them to come away from that experience with tinnitus simply due to noise exposure and whatnot. And then there are other variables too, but primarily noise exposure. So why is it that we find that, as an example, I'm not blanket terming anything here, but as an example, why is it that one person with severe tinnitus can experience relatively no distress or minimal distress versus someone with severe tinnitus who is whose life falls apart from it and they literally cannot function. What is the difference between the two? And clinically, this is the ultimate question that we all have on our minds. And this is what we are trying to navigate in the tinnitus rehabilitation space. So one large factor of this, and in answering the question, one large answer to this ultimate question is it is the way that the people perceive tinnitus differently. So how they are interpreting the tinnitus experience. Again, please don't shoot the messenger here. I'm here to educate. I'm here to inform. I'm not here to dismiss your symptoms, because absolutely, as I see it, there is no room for dismissal of the tinnitus symptoms or hyperacusis symptoms or misophonia symptoms. Absolutely not. I can see how damaging it is, how much of a struggle it is. And in fact, well, this is what I see day to day, week to week. So it's not about dismissing your experience at all. It is simply to help you to understand where CBT can assist in tinnitus rehabilitation, because it is addressing the question of how two people with severe tinnitus can interpret their tinnitus experience very differently. And so what we see is that the people who have very high tinnitus distress are looping in their mind with a lot of catastrophic thinking, a lot of negativity, a lot of doom and gloom, a lot of dead-end thinking, a lot of dead-end thoughts of, I can't cope with this, how am I ever going to be happy again, how am I going to live my life, how am I going to be a mother, husband, father, sister, what have you. All of those what if questions, which, or I cannot cope with this, my life is over, I will never be happy again, all of those are classified as catastrophic thoughts. And so that only increases the anxiety and the distress and the cortisol levels in the bloodstream, which only feeds tinnitus further. So it is, in fact, maintaining the tinnitus cycle and exacerbating it as well. So that's one example. We see very clearly that the people who have reduction of tinnitus symptoms or habituate to tinnitus or are able to function optimally in their life regardless of tinnitus, their cognitive framing of the tinnitus experience is very different to the people who are absolutely debilitated by it. And so we see that thoughts, the way that we are interpreting, the way the thoughts streaming through our mind's eye, has a direct effect on our physiology, on how our body reacts to tinnitus and hyperacusis and misophonia. I keep adding those extra words, but when I say tinnitus, please understand that it is the associated the tinnitus family. Let's call it the tinnitus family. It's not just purely tinnitus. Backtracking to the scene where the people who are able to manage their tinnitus distress or habituate to it or reduce tinnitus symptoms, how are they able to do that? It comes back to how they are framing their tinnitus experience, how they are thinking of it. Because thoughts, regardless of whether people want to believe it or not, this is scientifically proven as fact. Thoughts are things. Thoughts become a physiological response within the body. Now, understandably, you might be saying, hey, you know what? My thinking didn't cause this issue. We're not saying that the thoughts cause the tinnitus. We are saying that if we want to offload as much of the fueling factors or the influencing factors to tinnitus, we must reframe our cognition. We must be able to detach from the catastrophic thinking in order to reduce the anxiety response within the body, which also equals reducing cortisol, adrenaline within the body, which also equals soothing the limbic system in the brain. Okay, so it is in turn actually creating a physical response in a good way. So that's how reframing cognition physically has an impact, which is to reduce tinnitus frequency and intensity and improve distress levels. Okay, so reducing tinnitus distress levels. So this is in fact how CBT specifically for tinnitus can assist you. And perhaps it is not you, perhaps it is the next person. These videos, also to reiterate, the reason why I don't do a lot of videos is because I am very aware of the fact that people watch hundreds, literally hundreds of hours of tinnitus videos hoping that the answer will come to them. But I must emphasize that every tinnitus case is individual. It is unique to your biodynamic system. It is not generic. There are certain concepts that can be applied to every single person with tinnitus, and there are a lot of factors that are simply unique to the individual and that must be taken into account. Okay, so CBT is a type of therapy. It's called cognitive behavior therapy, which enables the individual to learn how to recapture their thinking style and actually reframe it in a more beneficial way, which will assist their central nervous system in getting into a better place, a healthier place, which is in fact supportive of their parasympathetic response, which is just a fancy clinical way of saying their ability to reduce stress within their physiology. Okay, so that is what CBT does. It actually empowers the person with tools to take away with you and apply independently of continuous therapy for the rest of your life. I mean, who wants to do that? No one wants to do that. So it is different to standard talk therapy. All right, so it is CBT specific to tinnitus. So again, if you look at my previous video, I am emphasizing the fact that I do recommend that you have a therapist, a CBT therapist that is educated in audiology as well. So you need a marriage of the two fields together in order to see significant results. This is my opinion. You can take it or leave it, but this is what I see time and time again. So this is how CBT can assist you. So it's not about that you're losing your mind, that you are mentally ill or any of those things. It is simply because we see very clearly that if you do not have the ability to master your thinking loops, as I call them, so that spiraling catastrophic thinking, which only increases your anxiety response, which is fuel to the fire of tinnitus. You can take that catchphrase. I use it all the time. This is something that I just made up, but I see tinnitus as a fire. And if you actually put the fuel, which is anxiety as I see it, and put it into fire, what happens? There's an explosion, okay? It just gets worse. So CBT helps you to reframe your cognition, also introduce more supportive behaviors, which is called behavioral activation in cognitive behavior therapy, to support your central nervous system, to learn how to reduce the anxiety, the tinnitus related anxiety response in the body, which in turn results in reduced tinnitus distress. So this is how CBT can assist you. Does this mean that CBT is the only answer? No, it doesn't mean that. It means that this is one component of tinnitus rehabilitation. Again, everyone is a unique biodynamic system. So take this video as general advice, as one component that you perhaps can look into, but not the only component. But it is simply to educate you in the sense that do not write off a therapeutic modality as silly, as useless, without understanding the science behind it. So it is essential to truly comprehend that tinnitus is multifaceted in most cases. And with that said, and the other thing that I want to say is that emotional processing or poor emotional processing is linked to tinnitus, or to increased tinnitus distress. So even in engaging in the therapeutic process, in speaking to a therapist about your journey, about your struggles and difficulties, that in itself helps you and assists you in emotional processing, which also is shown to improve tinnitus distress. Or another way of looking at it is to reduce tinnitus distress. Emotional exhaustion has also been linked to tinnitus manifestation and increased stress levels. So those are some areas where it has been researched that, yes, CBT for tinnitus is incredibly helpful in tinnitus rehabilitation. So I'll leave it there for today, and I hope this helped shine the light on one of the questions you may have had. I'll see you next time.